I always feel like somebody's watching me, and I have no privacy. Oh, always feel like somebody's watching me. Maybe it is just a dream. Do 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 do. When I come at home at night. Do 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 do. Always feel like somebody's watching me.
Dooby-dooby-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Dooby-dooby-doo. Salvati. Dooby-dooby-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
All right. Happy Thursday, guys. Welcome to Sab's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sab's podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sundays. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And yes, we are back, guys. Quick update for those of you who are not aware. Good news over at RBN. We were back up streaming today. So YouTube did remove one of those strikes. So I believe it was the most recent one that they removed. So that allowed us to be able to get back at it. So Nick and CJ, they had a stream earlier this afternoon. So that's good news. So I just want to say thank you all of you that retweeted that tweet that we asked you to retweet, that reached out to YouTube. Thank you guys so much for your support. Really do appreciate that. And other than that, we have a lot to talk about tonight. I usually give shout outs in the chat, but because I have so much to cover, I actually have 5 stories, but I couldn't fit them all in the thumbnail. So there is a bonus story. You'll have to stay tuned for that. Should be pretty interesting conversations tonight, I think. Really quick, I want to go ahead and shout out everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. You're keeping the lights on around here. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators. Don't forget about those Sabsters, Sabbies, and of course, members. All of their names are featured here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate your help. And that's actually another way that you can help out RBN. You know, like one of the ways that you can help us out is by being a patron of RBN, because the reality is, you know, if we have that support on Patreon and YouTube decides to just do what YouTube does, we still would be supported to be able to pay for all of this stuff, because we do have to pay for the streaming service that we use. That's a monthly payment. We also have to pay for the equipment that we have. That those things are not cheap, I'm telling you. And then when we do the things on the ground, like all these things like cost money. And so I just appreciate like all of your help, you guys. I really do appreciate that. Now, we have a lot to discuss tonight. I want to go ahead and share that thumbnail. We're going to get into it. I was waiting for one of these discussions. I was just really excited. I was like, we're going to get into this tonight. Tonight, we are discussing RFK Jr. testifies. Yes, that happened this morning. And you'll notice that is Hunter Biden kind of hiding behind him there. This does have to deal with him as well. This is in reference to weaponization of the federal government hearing. So we're going to get into that. I have a couple of clips that I'm going to, analyze, because I think it's a very, very revealing what happened this morning at that hearing. We're also going to discuss Tulsi Gabbard defends RFK Jr. And there's obviously a reason for that, other than the fact that, she left the Democratic Party. But there's a reason as to why Tulsi is defending him here. We're going to get into that. I'm also going to discuss Fran Drescher and Susan Sarandon SAG strike. So obviously they're not the only ones that are striking, but the fact that they are there, it speaks volumes, and it's bringing more attention to this particular strike. So we're going to get into their segments as well. And I'm also going to tell you what you can do to help those who are on strike right now. We're also going to discuss those Tennessee ballot wins. So we're all the way to Tennessee already. I can't believe it. We're almost done with all the states, if you believe it or not, guys. So we're going to get into that. And then I have a bonus story. If you followed me on Twitter today, you probably can guess what that story will be. But we're also going to have a little surprise story also towards the end there as well. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to go ahead and give a shout out to Roger Meadows. Thank you so much for the super chat. Did I miss Sab and JB since our backup 100-mile and running? We did not do the Sab and JB show today because remember, we could not stream. So when we found out that things were up and running, by the way, YouTube did not even send us an email to let us know. CJ just happened to check the channel and saw that, hey, it was removed, or one of them was removed, and one of the premieres was scheduled to premiere our little clips. So we didn't know. So by the time we found out, it was too late for us to come up with the story and all that stuff. So sorry about that, but you'll see us again next week for the Sabby and JB show. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with the first story here. We're going to get into this SAG strike, also the writer strike. They're combined kind of as one now. For those who are not aware, it's not just the writers in Hollywood that have gone on strike, but the actors, the SAG members have also decided to go on strike. That is Screen Actors Guild. And I want to say something before we get into this story, because I think there is a misconception in reference to actors in Hollywood. I think a lot of times when we think about actors, we think about actors that we know, the ones that are popular, like a Susan Sarandon or a Fran Drescher, like a Will Smith or Tom Cruise, those types of actors. But I think it's important to note that the majority of actors in Hollywood are actually not known. They're not famous. They're not making millions of dollars for a movie. They're working actors. They're the ones that they pick up as many acting gigs as they can, but they also have a full-time job because they're not getting those big gigs like a Will Smith will get, so that they can just do acting full-time to pay their bills. So I want to start off by saying that the majority of actors in Hollywood are not millionaires. They're not popular. Most of them, you don't even know their name, but they're needed, right? They may have extra roles. They may have acting roles where they just say one line. By the way, if you have a line, you get paid more. A friend of mine actually did extra work for a couple of years. She was like, cool, $500, and she didn't say anything. She just had to walk among a crowd of people. So that's just something to keep in mind, that a lot of these people are waiting tables or they're working retail. They have regular full-time jobs. And this is something that they do on the side. They're trying to build their resume so that they can get to that type of level of like a Will Smith. I want to start with this clip here from Case Study QB asking how long SAG-AFTRA hold out. Actors have to earn a minimum of $26K a year to qualify for health insurance. So this is another thing I think that may be surprising to people. Again, these are the working actors who are not doing this full time.
Hey, ho, ho, corporate greeters got to go.
Sure, there's picket line pride, the solidarity, support for one another. But there's also real concern, whether it's actors or writers. How long can they hold out?
It's a hot labor summer out here.
I haven't ever paid the bills acting.
Ben Kaufman from Columbus, married, no kids. His working wife helps pay the $2,200 a month rent on their one-bedroom apartment while he...
First of all, problem number one, a 1-bedroom apartment that costs over $2,000 a month. But this is the reality in America, right? That's not uncommon here in Boston. Actually, you might be kind of lucky if you find something in that price. But this is the reality. Like 1-bedroom apartments are costing over $2,000. That's not just LA.
He tries to make it as an actor. This year, he estimates he earned about $600 from background work. Meantime,
I'm applying for everything. Like, I think I got a job at AutoZone, and I'll still work catering events. And if I have mornings free, I'll come out here and walk this fucking line. Like, I don't know. Like, I've been 15 days late on rent, like, twice in the past 3 months. And, like, thank God the landlord hasn't cracked down on us.
his worries no doubt shared by the vast majority of those on strike who don't make big money. Some of those who do, though, here as well, because solidarity is real, as are their memories of their own struggles. We spoke with Kristen Wigg.
It's very important that we're out here and that we're all standing together. There's so much on the line, and we've got a long way to go, but we're standing strong. And yeah, a lot of people will be out of work.
A lot of people like Ben Kaufman, one of some 160,000 from SAG-AFTRA, on strike. People with lives and dreams interrupted, staying union strong for now, but
It's not something you can depend on. Like I said, like, I'm 40. I graduated from college in '06. Like, I've never paid the bills acting. I've been in the union 2 years. I'm looking to further my opportunities, and like right now, this is like taking some away from me.
actors have
I just want to pause here for a second. When he said that it's not something that you can depend on, I will also add the same thing in reference to waiting tables. Now, I waited tables for years, along some other odd jobs, but you can't really rely on that either. Like some nights, like you'll do really well and you may come home with like $150, $200 for a Friday night shift or a Saturday night shift. And then there's some nights where it's slow when you don't know that this is going to be a slow Friday, right? So it's not just this profession. There are other professions where it's the same way, where you kind of a part of this gig economy, so to speak, and you really are depending on people showing up in order for you to get paid. So it's just something to think about there.
to earn a minimum of $26,000 a year to qualify for health coverage. One SAG-AFTRA board member estimates that only 12% of the entire union qualifies for that. In Hollywood, Phil Schuman, Fox 11 News.
Only 12% of union members from SAG actually qualify for health insurance. You see, again, if we had health care for everyone in this country, if we had a Medicare for all, if we had universal health care, this wouldn't be an issue. The fact that you have to make a certain amount of money in order to qualify for health insurance, it's almost like they're punishing people for being working class. That's what it's like. Like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Sorry, you didn't make $26,000 this year, so you don't get any health insurance. You know, how is this allowed to happen in a country like the United States? Now, Fran Drescher has been very vocal about this. For those who don't remember her, she was the star of a show during the 90s called The Nannies. I used to watch that show like back in the day. It was a sitcom. And she's being very vocal about this. Now, I haven't seen her do a lot of acting, gigs recently, but she came out in support, not just to support the actors, but also to support the writers. And Morning Joe interviewed her. Now, shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. There are 4 of these clips, so we're just going to get started with the first one here.
Joining us now, president of the Screen Actors Guild, Fran Drescher. Really good to have you on the show. We've been watching everything that you've had to say, and also what Bob Iger had to say. And I'm curious what your response is to the fact that he says that you guys have a level of expectation that is not realistic.
The man makes $78,000 a day. So, plus a $20 million bonus. He is the last person to talk about what's realistic when the majority of my members can't even meet their health insurance minimum. And I think that he never attended one single meeting at the negotiation. He was completely absent.
We're going to pause here because I want you to see what these people are making. So think about this. They were told that what they're asking for is unreasonable. So you mean to tell me it's unreasonable to give your employees health insurance? unless they make $26,000 a year. Their health is only valuable depending on how much money they make a year. But look how much these executives are making. Warner Brothers executive is making over, 490? Is this per day? Oh, highest paid Hollywood executives in the last 5 years. Okay, so Warner Brothers executive is making over 490 million. This one I can't read it. I think this says Endeavor is making over 300 million. Netflix, Reed Hastings is making over 200 million. Walt Disney's making over 190 million. Netflix, Ted Sarandos, over 190 million. Endeavor, Patrick is making over 143 million. Paramount, Joseph is making over 150 million. Comcast is making over, I think that's 170 million. Fox, Lachlan Murdoch is making over 171 million. And Fox, Rupert Murdoch is making over 174 million. So it seems like to me, it's really easy if you're them to complain when you're making that kind of money. Keep in mind, they are way over the threshold to have the health insurance.
Except to make that recording at the camp for billionaires where they all arrive on their private jets. So, it's like you can't even talk about reality with this, and I don't really want to make it about him. This is a workers' movement, and it's about greed and trying to, they get bonuses depending on shareholders' performance. And so, of course, they're going to try and squeeze everybody to make the stock go up so more people will buy stock. But when your entire business model is, the foundation for that is us, and you're trying to screw us as if you're like a land baron of feudal medieval times, and we're your serfs. It's like, wake up and smell the coffee. The jig is up.
I want to pause here for a second and just add something about the shareholders. When she says shareholders, who are some of those shareholders? BlackRock is one of the shareholders, Vanguard Group, State Street Corporation. Those top three, they usually seem to find their way around. So think about that. You have to know who the shareholders are to understand why some of these decisions that are being made in the first place.
It's time for you to recognize that you have to pivot and understand that the business model has changed and the old contract no longer can be negotiated in a way that will give economically.
Okay, so let's go to part 2 here from Case. Again, shout out to Case for these clips, because he's just been doing the damn thing.
The performers, they're due.
So what is the pivot exactly? Because you hear the arguments about whether or not your likeness can be used. Is it an argument about AI? Isn't the bottom line about money? And what exactly is it that you need in order to make this strike end? And how long do you think members of the unions can stick to this strike?
Well, look, we had an unprecedented strike authorization vote from our members because they're on the ground living this inequity. Not, these CEOs who are living the high life. So, they feel like they're at the breaking point where they can't take it anymore. Another contract for 3 more years where the minimums for the majority of the members does not reflect the amount that catches up to inflation. So in real money, what they're offering us would be less than what we were making in 2020. And that's what we're supposed to take all the way to 2026. We need at least an 11% increase in the minimums to catch up with inflation. All other labor unions work with inflationary increases, not our union, not our contract. And so, you know, the amount of the caps are the same, where they sort of cut you off with residuals since, I think, 1980 or something. The whole thing is outdated and doesn't really apply to the new business model, which is streaming has so infiltrated this industry and disemboweled the old business model. So in streaming, the name of the game is subscribers. It's not about the longevity of a series. And you can see how the public is being trained to accept what's called.
Okay, let's talk about something here in reference to streaming, because I think she hit on a really good point. Netflix, for example, for them, it's about the number of Netflix subscriptions that they have. That determines whether or not they are going to be successful and make money. This is why sometimes I know some of us we've found a show on Netflix that we really loved and we don't understand why it's canceled or they're not going to bring it back for another season just because like the way it ended or whatever, right? To us, it doesn't make sense. But to Netflix, to the owners of Netflix, it does make sense because they are on a subscription model. That is how they make their money. If their subscriptions go down, there may be some cuts in reference to some of the programming that they have. And there have been a lot of complaints about that from customers, saying that Netflix had this show on and they took it off, but they had this other show that they've kept on for years. There have been a lot of those complaints from Netflix customers, but you have to understand the model. And I want to touch on this issue about image and likeness. So Bass Amuse says, if you go on local news, they want your image in perpetuity too. Let's talk about image and likeness. This is something that does not only revolve around actors. This is also an issue with musicians. You see, there was this thing back in early 90s, actually probably through all the 90s, where there were a lot of the boy bands that were popping up, young artists, very, very young, like Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, et cetera, et cetera. They kind of had like their heyday during the 90s and into the 2000s. Some of these artists found out along the way, especially those that didn't read the contract fully, that they actually did not own their image or their likeness. Now, what does that mean? That means that the record company can use their image, their face, their likeness. And if they decide that they want to make lunch boxes with your face on it, they could do that. If they want to make a Barbie doll of you, they can do that. You don't own your image or your likeness anymore. So if you decide that you want to get a haircut, you may have to actually clear that with the record company before you do so. Now, this is something that I learned watching Making the Band and a lot of VH1 Behind the Music. A lot of those behind the music stories where I found out that a lot of these artists, they signed these contracts, didn't really understand a lot of the legal jargon that was in these contracts. And so they were just excited to get a record deal, sign their name away, but also signed away their image and their likeness. This is why someone like Prince said that he was a slave to the record company. So in order to get out of his contract, he changed his name. That was actually genius. And he was known as the artist formerly known as Prince. That was actually pretty damn smart. So that is something that is important. And you also have to think about this issue with AI, where Hollywood has also played around with this a little bit too. They've already confirmed that Chat GPT can actually write scripts for them. They don't actually need these writers if they don't want to. We've seen movies where they've used older footage of Hollywood actors from like the 70s, like Star Wars, the newer Star Wars has done this, and they've taken those images and basically CGI'd it onto, a current body that is not that person to make it look like it is still that person from long ago. Technology has come a long way. But if you're an actor and you got into this business before there was streaming and before AI started to take off the way that it has, yeah, I could see where you would say the contract needs to change, Let's get into the third clip here.
limited series and very short episodes per season, maybe 6 or 8. If you're lucky, you get 10. And then the series maybe will go 3 or 4 if it's considered successful. When I did The Nanny, I would do some seasons we did 28 episodes, never anything less than 22 or 24. And then it continues to have a very long tail of revenue, which pays all of the people that worked on the show continuously.
Pause right there. That constant revenue coming in, this is another thing that has changed. So if you were around during the 90s like I were, and you saw these shows like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or Full House, so those artists still get paid for the reruns that run on other networks like TNT or TBS. Nick at Night, I think it's still a thing where they show like those older shows, but the actors still are paid for that, right? Well, with streaming, that's not necessarily the case. As Fran is telling you, remember with Netflix shows, a lot of times these shows only have 8 episodes, sometimes 10. Look at a show like Stranger Things, for example, and we cringe towards the end, wanting more. We binge through those episodes, right? We're able to do so. But to us, it doesn't make sense. We're like, why would you stop at 10 episodes? Why didn't you make it 14? Why didn't you make it 20? That's how we grew up watching TV. But to Netflix, it does make sense. To them, it doesn't matter if they only have 8 episodes. Again, this is all based on a subscription model to them. So that's just something you got to keep in mind. If you're the actor, and a lot of these streaming services are becoming more popular than regular television shows, well, then you don't know if you have another season. You don't know if they're going to bring you. You don't even know Netflix has canceled shows right in the middle of a season. Like, you don't know what's going to happen, but you need the work. So what do? So things do have to change.
And so once we got revenue sharing in the form of residuals, it all worked as long as the business model was predicated on the longevity of the show because of eyeballs and ad dollars. If those 2 elements were there, the show would stay on. Shows stayed on 10 years. And, you know, but now it's not that way, because once the show does the heavy lifting for bringing in a new surge of subscribers, and their algorithms tell them that, you know, up after 10, it starts to go downhill. After 3-4 years, it's, you know, maybe we're making our current subscribers happy, but we're not getting more subscribers. And more subscribers is the name of the game. So we'll recondition the current subscribers to be, you know, happy or disappointed that, oh, my favorite show just ended. But wait, we'll tantalize them with another flying dragon, one more big star, one more big director that costs a fortune. And meanwhile, where is our revenue sharing on, you know, 6 or 10 episodes a season? We cannot economically live on that.
This is exactly what they do. This is exactly what Netflix does. How do they increase their subscribers? Create new shows. When Netflix brought in Stranger Things, that really increased their subscriber count, right? They don't have to keep the show. They're just trying to get the numbers in, get people to subscribe. They're not really focused so much on how many people are watching the show. How many people they're not paying attention to that. They're looking at the subscriber count. So that's what they just keep doing. They just keep bringing in all these new shows with a big name, right? And a lot of hype around it to increase the subscription revenue. And I'm going to be honest. I think over time, I don't think that's going to be a sustainable model. I think eventually people will get tired of that. People will be like, you bring in these great shows and these great actors and then you just end it. Like, why? Or you rush through it just to give it an end. Why? They'll bring in comedy specials where they've paid the comedian, like the stand-up specials, they paid the comedian like $20 million for a stand-up special, right? And it may be there for a couple of months and it's gone. So it's just like, there are some frustrations, I think, that not just the actors have with this model, but the consumers also have with this model.
And so we have to go into the other pocket, which is what the new business model dictates that was foisted upon us. We have to go into the subscriptions pocket. And we were completely stonewalled. I don't think that they thought that we were.
Yeah, this is what a lot of people, even, hold on a second, because I'm going to tell you something, even with independent media that I think you're going to find interesting. Have you noticed now, even with independent media, a lot of people are going through that subscription model where it's like, if you want to get like the full content, you have to become a subscriber, a paid subscriber. I don't mean like you guys had subscribed to my YouTube channel. I mean, like there's that paid subscription. In addition to that, a lot of people have been going that route now. That's becoming more common. If you want the full thing, you got to pay to subscribe. This is exactly why, like, I personally, I don't do paywall content. Like, you guys know that. Like, I have Patreon, but I don't do like, you can only see this segment on Patreon. The reason why I don't do that is because I know a lot of people are working class and a lot of people can't afford to pay for a subscription for this show, that show, this show, that show, and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think it's fair to hide information from you. So for me, all my information is free. I don't have a paywall like on Rockfin, because to be on Rockfin, you have to do premiums every now and then. On Rockfin, like on Thursdays and Fridays, those shows will be a premium, but it's the same show I'm doing on YouTube. So I never make it so that you can't see the content and get the information. But more people have gone that route because they're trying to make money and make it more so a business. And they're like, I can make a lot more money if I have the subscribers. And also, if they're suppressed by YouTube, that's another way of getting around that. They know they have those paid subscribers. But yeah, the subscription model, I don't know. Let's go into this last clip here.
Going to approach this problem with such an intelligent analysis of this business, but we cannot make incremental changes to an old contract that no longer applies. How much could they possibly give us? We're never going to catch up because the series and episode buys are considerably smaller. We're seeing more and more shows that don't even have series regulars on it anymore. And so it's time that we shift over. But as soon as they heard that, they stonewalled us. No. And they never opened up that door. And even now, they're punishing us because we gave them 12 unprecedented lengths of days to extend, in spite of the fact that the members were afraid that we were weakening. And in that time, all they did was dupe us into having more time to promote their summer movies because they gave us nothing in return. And so we went on strike, but we have been happy to keep negotiating, and they are acting like punishing feudal land barons where the peasants started to act up, and they said, we're not going to talk to you.
All right, Screen Actors Guild President Fran Drescher, I hear you. And knowing the value of all the actors and everybody in the industry, the writers, the people who are struggling to make ends meet, we appreciate your coming on. Please keep us posted and come back, especially when there are new developments. Fran Drescher, thank you very, very much for being on the show this morning.
Okay, so as you can tell, Fran is fired up there. Now, Hardlins Media is in the chat, says Hollywood is imploding. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, look, it's happening all over the place. JB says, yeah, me neither. Most people are poor, working poor like me, so I don't do paywalls. Right, like that's why I don't do it. And this is not to, you know, no shade to people that do paywalls. I think most people who do that have an audience that doesn't mind paying for it, but I don't. I would never tell you guys, sorry, you can't see this unless you pay for it. What? I'm going to talk about go out there and do mutual aid for the people, and then I'm telling you, you got to pay just to see the content. No, I don't do that. Saul says Netflix stock fell 18 billion yesterday. That was your money to pay the people. Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. Now, Susan Sarandon is also out there on the lines picketing as well. Now, Susan Sarandon, I got to give her cred where cred is due, because she is an activist. Like, she was at the Medicare for All marches. She protested outside AOC's office. She was arrested recently, actually. I believe that was a Julian Assange event. Like, she goes out there and she gets out there, and she doesn't have to do that. If she wants to, she can just be an actress and pretend like none of these things are happening around her, but she chooses, to get involved. So I want you to hear what she had to say about the strike.
Find an answer to streaming and to AI, which are situations that are new. So we're in an old contract for a new type of business, and it's just not working for most people.
Because I just a very quick message about your words about me here today. Can you just give us a little message about
well,
me here today?
It's important. Unions are very important. I'm here because I'm in the SAG-AFTRA union. I'm also here because of the writers union. And the corporate greed that the studio has made it very difficult for people to have lives. And the issues of streaming and AI.
So notice she mentioned again some of the issues, streaming and AI, right? She said that they're making it hard for people to have a living. Again, we're not talking about people like her. We're talking about the majority of actors in Hollywood that actually are not making millions of dollars, and you don't even know their names. So yeah, like she's out there. I think that's awesome and that's great. Now I gotta say something about scabs, because we got to keep it real for just a second, okay? Please don't be a scab. Meaning, don't cross the picket line. Hollywood needs writers. They're looking for writers. Don't sign up for it while they're on strike. Don't sign up for acting gigs while these actors are on strike. Don't go scaberific. Okay, is that a word? Don't go scaberific. Now, speaking of scabs, though, I'm saying this because this gentleman made this video, and I think he did such a good job about scabs. Listen to this. Get ready to laugh.
Y'all couldn't even make it a week. You couldn't even make it a week without fucking scabbing. You know how fucking crazy that is? The actors haven't even been on strike for a week. The writers have been on strike for like 70 days. But now the actors on strike, and suddenly all these film fucking influencers, these movie content creators, suddenly falling over each other to go on here with their straw man arguments and their goofy little sketches, explaining to the world why scabbing is okay. Oh, it's completely fine. You see, it's different. I'm not going to be part of the union. I'm not trying to be an actor. You're a scab. Shut the fuck up. All right, you're a scab, and that's why people are going to start picking you. They're going to reach up on those scabs and start picking them out of their fucking feed. So watch out with your straw man fucking arguments and your goofy fucking sketches, you idiots. Because in 2 weeks, UPS, 340,000 UPS employees are going to go on strike. Y'all gonna get on here and start being like, I'm sorry, I'm a box truck delivery driver influencer, and just because UPS is on strike doesn't mean people like me cannot take deals to deliver things inside of our wonderful cars. So
I'm laughing because I'm seeing these videos.
To UPS, thank you so much to my brand deal for promoting your new UPS flavors that I can deliver here in my car. I will pay. And if you want to become a UPS driver just like me, please use my promo code I am a scab 2023 for 20% off. 20% off union level wages and benefits. That's right. Become a scab and make sure that union members can't get extra union benefits in the future. And then eventually we'll all be replaced by AI, whether it be actors or just autonomous vehicles that can drive and deliver the packages themselves. Ooh, how about instead of a live action Little Mermaid, we have a Little Mermaid that's completely staffed with drones? Wouldn't that be great? I would love to see a robot drone. That's right. Go ahead and type in SCAB 2023. Use my promo code because I'm a soulless little...
What can you say? But it's true what's happening. People are doing that, right? They're like, this is my time. This is my opportunity. But every time there is a strike, I go back to a bigger theme, which is, do we need a general strike? If it's not UPS, if it's not John Deere, if it's not the teachers, the nurses, the writers, the actors, at the end of the day, do we need a general strike? Now, it was about 2 years ago, those of us at RBN said we do need a general strike in this country. We need to have that in order to push back against the powers that be, which is the corporations. And it seems like maybe some people in Hollywood might be feeling that way too. Maybe. Listen to this. Shout out to Neoliberal Tears, right? So Neoliberal Tears says, at Les Dog, all of us need to strike against the corporations. Listen to this. It's short, but very good.
Yeah, all of us need to strike against the fucking corporations, not just fucking SAG and the actors, the teachers. Everybody need to be fucking striking against the fucking corporations because they fucking all of us. They fucking all of us. Yeah, all of us need to strike against the fucking corporations, not just fucking SAG and the actors, the teachers. Everybody need to be fucking striking against the fucking corporations because they fucking all of us. They fucking all of us.
Something to think about. Something to think about. But I'm in favor of a general strike. Obviously, we would need a lot of mutual aid set up for that, but I am definitely in favor of that. Now, the question that continues to come my way is, what can you do to help? So Adam Conover actually answers that question. How can you help support those who are on strike right now?
So the number one question I get is, how do I support writers and actors on strike? Do I cancel my streaming subscription? What do I do? Here's the answer. Neither the Writers Guild nor SAG-AFTRA is calling for a consumer boycott right now. Instead, we're asking people to do 3 things. 1, post on social media, boost our message, say you stand with us. Number 2, follow our strike rules. Do not do the work of a striking writer or actor. That's called scabbing. We have facts on our websites that explain exactly what we're asking of non-members and what work we're asking them to refrain from. And finally, and most importantly, donate to the Entertainment Community Fund. This is an incredible nonprofit that supports writers, actors, and any crew member who needs help paying their rent or their medical bills. Every dollar you donate there will go to a writer, actor, or other entertainment worker in need. That helps us stay on this picket line longer, and that helps us win. We are so grateful to all of you for your support. Thank you so much. And remember, until the strike is settled, there will be no acting and no writing. So the number one question.
Okay, so let's see what he said, because here it is. We're fighting for the survival of our profession. And you guys have been asking me, what about the demands, right? So I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger because for whatever reason, like their text is super small. But here's some of the things they're asking for. We need an 11% general wage increase in year 1 so our members can recover from record inflation during previous contract term. The response was that the most they'll give them is 5%. They're demanding a comprehensive set of provisions to grant informed consent and fair compensation when a digital replica is made of our performance is changed using AI. So again, I told you that was one of the issues they had. The response is, we want to be able to scan a performer's image, pay them for half a day's labor, then use an individual's likeness for any purpose forever without their consent. We also want to be able to make changes to principal performers' dialogue and even create new scenes without informed consent. So this is not the likeness thing. Another thing I want to say where someone did this and I was not happy about it. I remember during one of the Super Bowl halftime shows, Justin Timberlake used a hologram of Prince during his performance. And that made me feel some kind of way because I'm a mad Prince fan. I love me some Prince, and I've seen him live in concert. That was my dude. Okay. Me and Prince was like this. But Prince never wanted his image or likeness to be used after his death. So that kind of made me feel some kind of way when I saw this hologram of Prince. What else are they asking for? How about consultations with qualified hair and makeup professionals for all performers on set to ensure equity for performers of color and a requirement to have proper tools and equipment? The response: we will do this for principal performers, but background actors are on their own. Now, some of you may say, why is that important? It actually is important because not everybody knows how to do makeup for my complexion. Not everyone knows how to do my hair, like my type of hair, even if they are a professional hairstylist or makeup artist. That actually is true. Also, they're asking for consider this comprehensive plan for actors to participate in streaming revenue, since the current business model has eroded our residuals income. They said no. So that was just a flat no. Contribution caps haven't been raised in 40 years. Imperiling our pension and health plans, would you consider raising the caps to adjust for inflation and ensure that all performers, regardless of age or location, receive equal contributions? Here are some nominal increases nowhere near the level of inflation that won't adequately fund your health plan. Also, background child performers under 14 years age living in West Coast zone don't deserve pension contributions, which is why we haven't paid them since 1992. So with the healthcare, let's just all remember during the pandemic, the actors suffered work-wise as well. You know, just like we had certain like shutdowns, certain states, like they had to deal with that too. So just keep that in mind. So that's an issue. Also, timelines we proposed help series regulars by limiting the increasingly long breaks between seasons and giving them some certainty as to when they'll start work again or will be released. Take these select few improvements that will only help a select few. And last but not least, drop the ruse that series regulars are becoming residents of a new state or country when they go on location, and adequately pay them for all of their relocation costs. The response is, here's some stipends which don't realistically reflect the cost of relocating out of state or out of country production. That's another thing too, I think some people may not realize. If you're not a big name like a Tom Cruise or someone like that, a lot of times they're not paying for your relocation expenses when you go on set. These are just some of the things I think that people did not know. So I know some people are just like, well, why should they deserve to go on strike? Again, the majority of actors are not millionaires. JB says, yeah, me neither. Oh yeah, I said that one. Thank you for the super sticker, Juliet. What's up, Juliet? Thank you, Trauma Queen. What do they expect when the 1% have hoarded all the money? Normal people can't afford anything. Industries are going to fall. We are all broke. Yep. Thank you, Victor. My granddad taught me as a kid that you don't cross the picket line. Don't be a scab. Your granddad was a smart man, Victor. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, and then we'll go to the next story. Thank you for the tip, Roger. It's killing me, these actors who have to take whatever job they can get, plus have to hit 26K in 1 year to qualify for healthcare in a state they do not realize the power they have. While they are out of acting work, they can run those CBIs as amendments for cow care, outlaw private equity from owning housing, and a minimum wage amendment saying minimum wage must always be 30% above housing costs. This will relieve the pressure as they can fight for other things like against AI, automation, robots, holograms, and the like. Newsom already passed public banking legislation, so regional and public banks are already being established. Quick, Sabby, give me Fran Drescher's number. She has an army of working actors that can launch these. They're killing me. I feel like an audience member yelling at the chick in the horror movie. Let's make that minimum wage law. Have the state subsidize small to mid-sized businesses covering 85% to 100% of their labor costs. Thank you so much for that, Roger. And I do not have Fran Drescher's number. Sorry about that. We're going to our next story here, which is about Tulsi Gabbard. So you guys know a lot of mainstream media people have been heavily attacking RFK Jr. You guys know I do not support RFK Jr. But just because I don't support someone doesn't mean I think they should be attacked because they're running against Joe Biden. Like, that's some of the criticism that has happened. Now, Tulsi Gabbard recently had an interview. Hold on, make sure I got the right thing here. Yeah, well, she's defended RFK and she's defending Cornel West. But Tulsi Gabbard had an interview here on Fox News, and I want you to hear what she had to say in reference to opposition towards Joe Biden.
Joining us now, Tulsi Gabbard, former Democratic candidate for president and Fox News contributor. Great to see you in studio, Tulsi.
Great to see you. I would like to go to both of those.
Oh, wouldn't you?
By the way,
I don't know. Zuckerberg's looking pretty buff, but Musk's got him on the pin.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this? Why are they freaking out about this? Is this a real threat to a, I guess, weak president?
Well, I think they definitely do see it as a real threat, which is why you're seeing all of these headlines pop up. They're showing exactly how concerned they are. The sad part is, anybody who knows Cornel or Bobby Kennedy Jr. knows they're good people and they're doing what they're doing because they care. I don't agree with everything that they stand for, but they're motivated by a desire to serve.
But you would think that they're just the worst people ever, by the way. You hear the whisper, forget the whisper campaigns. It's all just a ego exercise. Well, maybe it is a little bit for the no labels people, but certainly not for RFK Jr. That man is vilified morning, noon, and night. And I don't agree with him on a lot of issues, but I do on some of his stuff that he's worried about the medical cartels and all that, and perhaps on the war issue. Yeah. But I mean,
they're vilifying him in the same way that they vilified me back in 2020 when I ran for president, the same way that they vilify anyone that they deem a threat. I have no doubt that they'll get started on Cornel West here shortly.
They don't like his, ascots or something.
That's the problem, is they'll find whatever they need to. They'll make up whatever they need to smear and destroy people because they don't have a conscience. They don't care who gets hurt.
They don't have a record.
Let's pause here for just a second. This is very important what Tulsi is saying here. I was not a Tulsi supporter. I was a Bernie supporter. I'm pretty sure a lot of you know that, but I was a Bernie supporter. But I saw the way that they treated Tulsi Gabbard too when she ran in 2020. We'll get into a couple of clips here in a second just to remind you. When the Democratic Party decided they were not going to like her anymore. But what she's saying here is very true. They'll find something to use to smear you with once they find that you are not the status quo. You're not really their type of candidate. Nina Turner described this as you're not the right kind of Democrat. That's what they had said to her. The Black Caucus said that to Nina Turner when she was running for Congress, right? That's why they chose to endorse Shontel Brown over her. So that's what it's about, being the right kind of Democrat or the right kind of candidate, period. You're not playing by the rules. You don't fit into the status quo. And for the candidates that do play by the rules and do fit into the status quo when there are truths that are told about them that should give people pause, the Democratic Party will do everything that they can to defend those people, like they're doing right now with Joe Biden, like they did with Bill Clinton, like they did with Barack Obama. That's one of the problems you'll see with the two-party system. Like, as long as you fit into their idea of status quo and what they want you to be, if you had some fuck-ups in the past, they'll do whatever they can to either cover it up. If it's leaked, they'll do whatever they can to defend you. It is when you are outside of that status quo, is when those fuck-ups are released. Well, they'll just use that and smear you as much as they can. Or sometimes they will be the ones to release that information themselves. So I think what Tulsi is saying here is very, very important, because once upon a time, she was the darling of the Democratic Party. They loved Tulsi Gabbard back in the day. They really thought that she was going to be the next big thing. They had her in line. They're like, you're next. You're next. Until Tulsi decided to do something that was out of line, according to the Democratic Party, just like that, they were done with her. Let's go on.
They have a terrible record.
They have a terrible record. Exactly. They can't make that case to the American people.
And the hologram presidency doesn't help either if he's a hologram candidate. Now, I want to play a moment from Cornel West to your point last night. I think it speaks to why the left is freaking out about him. Let's watch.
The people of Ukraine right now who are suffering, and I'm in deep solidarity with their suffering, they are being caught between this proxy war between the American Empire and the Russian Federation. Federation.
I just spoke to the foreign minister of Ukraine. We're saying that they are just victims in this proxy war. He would say, you're out of your mind.
Okay, let's go to the second clip here. And I want to say something. She said the left is freaking out. I'm sorry. The Democratic Party is not left. Okay. So I just want to add that in here because I want people to hear that and be like, oh, yeah, the left. No, the Democratic Party is not left. Okay, let's continue here.
That's a really thoughtful question.
Yeah, I mean, it's just offensive. Again, that they won't put President Joe Biden up side by side with these other people who are challenging them. Instead, just saying, oh, you're just a spoiler, shows how arrogant and entitled President Biden and his whole administration is,
they're
including
afraid.
the propaganda media who's pushing this whole narrative and doing their dirty work for them and trying to smear these people who are saying, hey, yes, I'm raising my hand because I want to serve our country.
And not to speak of the fact that I think the last poll, we showed it last night, I believe 44%, a plurality of those polled most recently said that we've given too much in the way of arms and aid to Ukraine, not too little.
Right. So they're not willing to have that conversation. Immediately they go towards labeling people,
You're pro-Russian, you're a Russian sympathizer.
Exactly.
You can't hold two thoughts in your mind at the same time.
This is why you don't see Tulsi Gabbard on CBS or MSNBC. Not CBS, sorry. Well, them too. You don't see her on CNN or MSNBC. This is why. They don't invite people like that on that are going to say the kind of things that Cornel West said. Now, they have to have Cornel West on because he's such a big name. And they realize, wait a minute, African-American scholar, he was a part of the Bernie Sanders campaign. A lot of people like Cornel West. This could be trouble for Joe Biden. Invite him on so we can try to, tear down his argument so people cannot vote for him. They can't ignore him. See, that's the thing about having someone who's pretty well known. But they're not going to invite Tulsi on for that conversation. They're not going to have people like Glenn Greenwald on for that conversation. They're not going to have people like Chris Hedges or Dr. Wolf on for those conversations. That's why you don't see them on those channels either.
That Putin is a terrible person, but perhaps this needs to come to an end.
My hope is the American people can see through this. They can see through all of this nonsense and recognize that in the Declaration of Independence, our government is given their power by us, we the people. So these elections that come up, we have the ability to bring about the kind of change we need to see in this country and frankly in the world. And we've got to make that happen.
Yeah, they don't have the consent of the governed on this. Tulsi, great to see you in studio, no less. All right.
Okay. So think about what Tulsi said. Like, we are the ones with the voice. And one of the ways we can express our voice is by the way that we vote, right? You don't have to continue voting for these people. Lose me and miss me with all the lesser of two evils BS. And I don't buy into that. Evil is evil, damn it. I mean, come on, give me a break. So I want to remind you the first strike against Tulsi Gabbard when the Democratic Party started to pause and say maybe she is not going to be the DNC or Democrat darling that we thought that she was going to be. I want to take you back to 2016 when Tulsi Gabbard, instead of endorsing Hillary Clinton, which I think Hillary thought was going to be a shoo-in, surprise. Tulsi Gabbard said she showed up to Hillary Clinton's door and was like, surprise. She did not endorse Hillary Clinton. Instead, she decided to endorse Bernie Sanders. This was the first strike against Tulsi Gabbard from the Democratic Party. Here she is explaining why she made the decision that she made.
Our most important quality in our president is their job as a commander-in-chief. As a soldier and as a war veteran, I know firsthand the cost of war. In my deployment to Iraq, I worked in a medical unit where every single day I saw and experienced that high human cost every single day. Bernie Sanders has good judgment and foresight to be able to make decisions about where America should deploy its military power and where it shouldn't deploy its military power. We see a clear contrast with that with Hillary Clinton, who has shown through her record her interventionist wars of regime change. Start with Iraq. She voted for and championed the overthrow of Saddam and the war in Iraq.
Let's pause here for a second. So she's calling out Hillary Clinton on her war record, which rightfully so. But see, this was a no-no. Tulsi was not supposed to do this. Tulsi was not supposed to say that. You were supposed to just go in line and say, I'm with her. Go right along with Hillary Clinton. So Hillary did not like that. And you know, the Clintons, if they don't like you, they'll make sure nobody else in the Democratic Party likes you either. Let's just keep it real. Now he's going to chime in here and say, oh, but you served in Iraq. Yeah, she did. She's already told you that. And she's telling you what she saw when she was there. We have to be very careful about faulting people that have been in the military and saw the wrongs, left the military, or were still part of the military because of economic reasons. Let's remember who the military tends to recruit. We have to be careful not to shame those people when they realize the wrongdoings. I think that's very important. So he thought this was a gotcha, but it wasn't a gotcha.
I did serve in Iraq. And again, I saw the cost of that overseas, and we're still experiencing the cost of that economically here at home. Number two, Libya. She was the chief architect within the Obama administration to overthrow Gaddafi in Libya. What's the result? We see a failed state. We see chaos, human suffering, loss of life, and ISIS and Al-Qaeda having a very strong stronghold there in Libya. Number three, Syria. She has been a champion for and a strong advocate for the overthrow of the Syrian government of Assad and promises to escalate that war with a so-called no-fly zone if she's elected president.
So you don't have confidence that she would be a good commander-in-chief?
Her judgment is the issue. And as a soldier and a veteran, I do not have confidence in her ability to be a commander-in-chief because she would, as she has stated, continue to take us into these interventionist wars of regime change that have cost our country dearly in trillions of dollars, thousands of American lives lost, what to speak of the hundreds of thousands of lives lost in the Middle East.
Where's the lie? So she was calling out again Hillary's record on war. She was calling attention to the fact that Hillary Clinton was a war hawk. Now, that was Tulsi on CNN, and she has not been invited back on CNN, I think, since she ran in 2020. So you see, they don't bring her on back anymore. You can't say stuff like that, and then they're like, oh, yeah, still continue to come on. But she was 100% correct. That is why she did not endorse Hillary Clinton, because her record on war. That was strike one from the Democratic Party against Tulsi Gabbard. And then there was strike number two. When Tulsi Gabbard ran for president through the Democratic Party, so she was running as a Democrat still. And this epic moment here, when she decided to expose Kamala Harris for everything that she was. Oh, we cannot forget this moment.
California, and I'm proud of that work. I want to bring in Congresswoman Gabbard. Congresswoman Gabbard, you took issue with Senator Harris confronting Vice President Biden at the last debate. You called it a, quote, false accusation that Joe Biden is a racist. What's your response?
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting Black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked.
This is why they don't want to have debates. This is why they don't want Joe to debate. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. It is the truth. Kamala, hang your head in shame.
Evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response.
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that work.
But you did all those things that Tulsi said. Like, that's the thing. She did all of those things that Tulsi Gabbard said. And she's proud of the work. How did this woman become vice president? Think about this, people. She couldn't get one delegate when she was running for president, and she's vice president? Mm-hmm.
I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform. That is why we created initiatives that were about reentering former offenders and getting them counseling. It is why, and because I know that criminal justice system is so broken, that I am an advocate for what we need to do to not only decriminalize, but legalize marijuana in the United States. I
want to bring Congresswoman Gabbard back in. Your response?
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you are in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse.
That's true. So for people who are not familiar with that story, because I read about that story after this debate happened, if you Google Kamala Harris blocking evidence in California, you'll see that story. By the way, I honestly think Google tried to hide that information after this debate happened, because I had to search, like dig for a minute. But yeah, that is actually true. Kamala Harris didn't want people to know about that. Guess what? Kamala Harris really screwed over Black people in California. Mm-hmm. You ain't never lied.
From being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
Senator Harris.
My entire career, I have been personally opposed to the death penalty, and that has never changed. And I dare anybody who is in a position to make that decision, to face the people I have faced, to say, I will not seek the death penalty. That is my background. That is my work. I am proud of it. I think you can.
Why'd you block evidence?
You can judge people by when they are under fire, and it's not about some fancy opinion on a stage, but when they're in the position to actually make a decision, what do they do? When I was in the position of having to decide whether or not to seek a death penalty on cases I prosecuted, I made a very difficult decision that was not popular to not seek the death penalty. History shows that, and I am proud of those decisions.
Senator Harris, thank you very much. Senator Bennett.
Not once did she even say that Tulsi was wrong. She didn't deny anything that Tulsi Gabbard said. So that was strike two towards Tulsi Gabbard. That bit right there and the bit before, when she endorsed Bernie Sanders in 2016 instead of Hillary Clinton. After that, the Democratic Party was done with Tulsi Gabbard, and they treated her like she was honestly thrown out leftover scraps after that. And then later on, as we know, Tulsi Gabbard announced that she was leaving the Democratic Party. Can you blame her? That's how they do you when you don't move the way they want you to move. So Tulsi defending RFK and Cornel West, she knows she'd been there. She has been there. And this idea that Joe Biden cannot be challenged and that he should just have a re-election, he should just be re-elected just because he's in that seat, it's ludicrous. Think about it. Ludicrous. JB says, I meant to discuss this on my show, but I ran out of time. But when Gabbard and Ingram are the voice of reason, you miss the plot. Tulsi's good on some issues, I think. Thank you for the super chat, The Traveler. Hillary Clinton even voted for the Hague Invasion Act. The U.S. invades Netherlands if it gets investigated for war crimes. Same with Biden. Yep, she's a war hawk. Thank you for the super chat, DC. Tulsi obviously ran to help Sanders in 2020, and he stabbed her in the back. Sanders, a white man, would not have been allowed to criticize Kamala. Yeah, that is true. Because they would have said, oh, Bernie Sanders is being racist towards Kamala Harris. That's what they would have used. Saul says she was big on keeping people in prison for free labor. Those liberal states and all. Well said. Well said. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip, Roger. The following is a text that I received 15 minutes ago. Roger, I'm begging, can you sign the petition to ban RFK Jr. from the ballot? What? Stop to end. Here's my answer. F you. Same shit y'all pulled with Bernie, which is why I'm not a Democrat anymore. So stop texting me. They just admitted to me that they are actively trying to keep someone off the ballot. Wow. You guys see this? You see what's happening? Speaking of RFK, we're going to go ahead and get right into that story because, oh boy, it's a doozy. Get comfortable, get popcorn, tea, whatever you need. Just get comfortable because we're going to be here for a bit. This morning was the hearing on the weaponization of the federal government. Now we know that Matt Taibbi has spoken at this hearing as well as many others, Michael Schellenberger as well. And this morning, RFK Jr. spoke at this hearing in reference to censorship. Now, I think it is important to commend the Twitter files because without the information that the Twitter files revealed, the reality is we may not even be here for this type of discussion today. But let me tell you something. The fact that you had people like RFK there to talk about censorship, and he is actively being censored during a committee hearing about censorship is very, very telling. It was just too much. We're going to play a couple of clips from that. I want to start from the very beginning with his opening speech. We'll also show the speech from the reporter who actually broke the Hunter Biden laptop story in the New York Post. We're going to hear her speech as well, and we'll dive in here and there. But hold on and get comfortable because it is a doozy, okay?
Most recently, Mr. Kennedy announced his campaign for president of the United States. During his campaign announcement, he stated, quote, "My mission over the next 18 months of this campaign and throughout my presidency will be to end the corrupt merger of state and corporate power that is threatening to impose a new kind of corporate feudalism in our country," end quote. It is for this that Mr. Kennedy finds himself receiving the scorn of both the political left and right. Because if one dares challenge the orthodoxy of the powers that be, then one is their enemy. As a graduate of the University of Virginia, Mr. Kennedy no doubt knows the following quote, For here we are not afraid to follow truth wherever it may lead. Thomas Jefferson. That truism was lost during the COVID pandemic. Individuals receiving scorn simply for asking questions, people being silenced for challenging the status quo. These are the kinds of questions that should have been publicly debated, and this hearing is focused on that truth, and we welcome Mr. Kennedy.
I thank the gentleman, Mr. Kennedy. We're glad you were here. We will now proceed with the opening statement. Before I do, I want to introduce the guy sitting behind you, Mr. Kennedy, who was a former colleague of ours, and maybe more importantly for me, a good friend of mine, Dennis Kucinich, who served in the United States Congress for 14 years, I believe, and great Buckeye. So we welcome Dennis, and I know Liz.
There's Dennis Kucinich right there for those wondering.
Here as well, and we appreciate your service, Dennis, and your commitment to the First Amendment. We'll now go with opening testimony. Mr. Kennedy, you are recognized for your opening statement.
Watch this, guys. This is a mess. So you see he's speaking, but the mic isn't on, right?
Mine's not. Make sure it's on.
Mr. Chairman, are you going to swear in the witnesses?
If you'll please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information and belief, so help you God? Let the record reflect that the witness is answering in the affirmative. Thank you. You may be seated. Mr. Kennedy, you are now recognized for your opening statement, and then we'll go right down the line. He's going to go a little longer.
Excuse me, point of order. I know that witnesses usually have 5 minutes. I see 10 minutes on the board. Is it going to be 10 minutes for every?
That's Stacey Plaskett, that's Delegate Plaskett. You guys know how she can be in these hearings. So he's just waiting to talk.
5 minutes, but we're pretty lax with this. We'll let him go for
We
a
are?
little, yeah.
I've seen you gavel down on quite a number of
We've
witnesses.
given senators and former Democrat members of Congress and all kinds
He's
of folks my
neither.
time.
He's
Yeah.
neither.
I'm just saying in past history.
Okay,
in
okay.
committee. But
Let's just
we'll
watch
give you,
the time for all the witnesses.
and if
then.
you want to cut him off and censor him some more, you're welcome to do it.
Oh, that's not my job. That's your job. Why don't you threaten a witness so that they can not want to be a witness?
You guys hear this? These people are running our country. This is ridiculous. It's interesting she mentions, why don't you threaten the witness? Wasn't she the one that threatened Matt Taibbi with jail time? Okay.
Kennedy is recognized for his opening statement. We'll give him 5 minutes, more or less, and then we'll move to the next one. Mr. Kennedy, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, maybe we could put 5 minutes on the clock then, not 10.
What a
5
doozy.
on the clock and we'll start it running.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to put aside my written statement for a moment and address one of the points that was brought up, I think an important point by the ranking member, that this body ought to be concerning itself with issues that impact directly the American people. The rising price of groceries, 76% over the past 2 years for basic foodstuff, the war in Ukraine, the inflation issues, the border issues, many other issues that concern us all as a nation. We can't do that without the First Amendment, without debate. When I gave my speech, my announcement speech in Boston 2 months ago, YouTube, I talked about all those issues. I focused on grocery. I focused on the fact that working class people can no longer afford to live in this country. I talked about inflation, all the issues that deeply concern you, and that you've devoted your career to alleviating those issues. 5 minutes into my speech, when I was talking about Paul Revere, YouTube deplatformed me. Yep. I didn't talk about vaccines in that speech. I didn't talk about anything that was a verboten subject.
That is 100% true. And I know that because, you know, myself and Eric, my producer, we were there in person in Boston, live streaming that speech. And that is 100% true. He didn't bring up that, you know, the jab issue at all. Not once in that speech. So what was the deplatforming really all about? Let's continue.
I just was talking about my campaign and things, the conversation that we ought to be having with each other as Americans. But I was shut down. And that is why the First Amendment's important. Debate, congenial, respectful debate is the fertilizer, it's the water, it's the sunlight for our democracy. We need to be talking to each other. Now, this is a letter that many of you signed, many of my fellow Democrats. I've spent my life in this party. I've devoted my life to the values of this party. This 102 people signed this. This itself is evidence of the problem that this hearing was convened to address. This is an attempt to censor a censorship hearing. The charges in this, and by the way, censorship is antithetical to our party. It was appalling to my father, to my uncle, to FDR, to Harry Truman, to Thomas Jefferson, as the chairman referred to. It is the basis for democracy. It sets us apart from all of the previous forms of government. We need to be able to talk, and the First Amendment was not written for easy speech. It was written for the speech that nobody likes you for. And I was censored not just by the Democratic administration, I was censored by the Trump administration. I was the first person censored by as the chairman pointed out, by the Biden administration 2 days after it came into office.
to make a long story short, he's been censored for a long time. I believe during his announcement, he said it's been 14 years that they prevented him from basically getting his voice heard. So the censorship issue it's a big one. You guys know this is like a big pet peeve of mine, because I do think it is really important that people's voices are heard. And I feel like if we do not have free speech, then what do we have? Like that's that one thing that you can have that doesn't cost you any money to have, right? So if they take that away, what else are they going to take away, right? What other rights are they going to take away from you?
In order to truthful, and by the way, they had to invent a new word called malinformation to censor people like me. There was no misinformation on my Instagram account. Everything I put on that account was cited and sourced to peer-reviewed publications or government databases. Nobody has ever pointed to a single piece of misinformation that I publish. I was removed for something they called malinformation. Malinformation is information that is true, but is inconvenient to the government, that they don't want people to hear. And that's antithetical to the values of our country. After I announced my presidency, it became more difficult for people to censor me outright. So now I'm subject to this new form of censorship, which is called targeted propaganda, where people apply pejoratives like anti-vax. I've never been anti-vaccine.
We got to skip this part. Sorry. I know how YouTube can be.
In Hatch to our house at the compound in Hyannisport. At that time, Orrin Hatch to me was like Darth Vader, because I was an environmentalist. And I was saying, why is Teddy bringing this guy home? But he knew that he was effective because he understood that comedy and respect and kindness and compassion and empathy for other people is the way that the only way to restore the function in this chamber. But more importantly, today we need to give an example in the leadership of our country of being respectful to each other. If you think I said something that's anti-Semitic, let's talk about the details. I'm telling you.
Let's pause here. So for those who are not aware, I think most of you know this by now, but there was obviously a video that went around on Twitter where it seemed like it was a private dinner conversation that RFK Jr. had in reference to the jab. Not going to get into the specifics, but basically he was saying how certain races of people, based on a study that he read, I guess were more susceptible to it, but he used different words. And obviously people really were angry at him about it. And they said that he was being anti-Semitic and et cetera, et cetera. He released a statement saying, obviously that's not true. I think we all know that's not true. Like he's obviously pledged like his allegiance to the state of Israel. And what I disagree with him on heavily is his issue on Israel and Palestine. I've talked about that on the show multiple times, right? So just like that, like the way they came after him, it was crazy. Just like they did Pramila Jayapal also recently. So a lot was going on in the last couple of weeks or whatever. So he's really angry also in reference to this, because it's not just how he felt about the jab. It's not just how he felt about the CIA, but also this recent activity that happened from that article that was posted about that what was a private conversation that he had.
All the things that I'm accused of right now by you. And in this letter are distortions, they're misrepresentations. I didn't say those things. There's fragments that I said, but I denounce anybody who uses the words that I have said to imply something that is negative about people who are Jewish. I never said those things. And I want to point out also that the chairman pointed to Dennis Kucinich, who's fighting behind me. There is no two people in the country who feel more differently about American politics than these two people. And yet they were friends. Dennis attended his children's basketball games, attended his daughter's wedding. This is what we need, how we need to start treating each other in this country. We have to stop trying to destroy each other, to marginalize, to vilify, to gaslight each other. We have to find that place inside of ourselves of light, of empathy, of compassion, and above all, we need to elevate the Constitution of the United States, which was written for hard times, And that has to be the premier compass for all of our activities. Thank you.
I honestly think the Constitution of the United States needs to be rewritten, to be honest. But to the point that he made about vilifying each other and everybody's kind of at each other's throats. I remember watching a documentary not too long ago where it was a couple of former like congressmen. They were talking about how it didn't used to be as divisive in, Congress, where like they may disagree with each other on policy if they're Republican or Democrat, but at the end of the day, like they were all still cool with each other. Their kids were friends with each other. They were friends with each other. They went to the same like country clubs and like barbecues and stuff like that. Like they all seemed to have a friendship, so to speak. And even though they disagreed on policy, but it is definitely not that way to today. Now, that is his opening statement. Now, I want to go ahead and fast forward to the statement given by the journalist that actually broke that Hunter Biden laptop story. So let's hear from her and we'll get back to RFK Jr. They did censor him a lot. So I don't have a lot to show you of what he said that I can actually play on here, but let's get to Emma.
My name is Emma Jo Morris, politics editor at Breitbart. I'm here today because I published a series of news stories 3 years ago in October of 2020 about Hunter Biden's now infamous laptop, also known as the laptop from hell, which is seen as some of the most scandalous reporting of the last decade. What was more scandalous than the reporting itself, though, was the fact that it exposed the unholy alliance between the intelligence community, social media platforms, and legacy media outlets. At the time, I was deputy politics editor at the New York Post, and my reporting showed that despite then-candidates Joe Biden's repeated and furious denials, he was apparently involved in the foreign business deals of his family. Over several days, just weeks before Americans would vote for their next president, I revealed verified, authentic emails from the Biden Scion's hard drive showing Ukrainian business partners receiving leaks from the Obama White House. I documented an off-the-books meeting between then Vice President Biden and a Ukrainian energy executive and introduced the world to the big guy who got action on a deal with CEFC, China Energy Company. The Post published exactly how the material for the reporting was obtained, even identifying our sources, as well as a federal subpoena showing the FBI was in possession of the material the story was based on and had been since December of 2019. But when the stories appeared on social media that morning, the venue where millions of Americans go to find their news and editors to get their angles, within hours, the reporting was censored on all major platforms on the basis of being called hacked or Russian disinformation.
Let's pause here for a second. If you remember going back to the Twitter files, remember one of the files that was released was actually one of the big ones was the Hunter Biden laptop story and how the FBI actually had their hand in Twitter's back pocket in reference to suppressing and censoring that particular story. It was her who broke the story and it was in the New York Post. So it was shared on Twitter. So they actively contacted Twitter executives and told them to, don't you keep that story up there. Remove that story. This is Russian information. That's the excuse that they use to tell them to remove it, right? Obviously, we see now that that obviously is not the case, that it was very much real. That laptop did exist. She'll go on to explain more, but I just want to take it back to, again, had it not been for the Twitter files, would we be where we are right now today? Would this hearing have even happened?
Twitter refused to allow users to share the link to the stories, banned the links from being shared in private messages, a policy, by the way, that's used to clamp down on child porn, and locked the Post out of its verified account. Facebook said it would curb distribution and reach of the links on its platform. However, the stories were not based on hacked materials, nor were they Russian disinformation. And despite those claims appearing to come out of thin air at the time, we would eventually learn that they actually didn't come out of thin air at all. On October 19th, 5 days after the Post began publishing, Politico ran a story headlined, "Hunter Biden's story is Russian disinfo, dozens of former intel officials say." God, I can't even say that with a straight face, you know?
She laughed in their face because it's absolutely ridiculous. And that shows you where Politico stands too. See how Politico just followed the State Department talking points? Politico had no proof of that, right?
Politico printed a letter completely uncritically from veteran members of the U.S. intelligence community, falsely claiming that the Post expose has, quote, all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. My God. Most notable among the signatories of that letter were Jim Clapper from former DNI, Michael Hayden, former CIA, John Brennan, former CIA, despite having such damaged credibility following their participation in the Russia collusion conspiracy theory. A few days later, on October 22nd, when Biden appeared in the second presidential debate and was confronted with the facts of the Post reporting, he said to Trump, quote, 50 former national intelligence professionals said this. What he's accusing me of is a Russian plot.
Yep.
But it was not.
You see how that worked, guys? You see how all they had to do, the FBI tell the Twitter executives that it's Russian, misinformation, tell them that. Then next thing you know, they let Politico know. And then once Politico published that thing, then Joe Biden got his talking cue right then and there. Oh, Politico published it, so I'll just go ahead and repeat what they said. So you see the media was just right in the back pocket of the FBI, just like that, to go with the same talking points so that Joe Biden could say there are 50 sources that say that this is incorrect.
And he knew that. Now, fast forward to this year, 3 years later. Just last spring, House investigators revealed it was a call by now Secretary of State Antony Blinken to former acting CIA Director Michael Morell that prompted the spy letter published by Politico, which bypassed agency approval processes that would have been normally applied. It is also now known that ahead of my reporting, federal agencies were priming social media companies to execute an operation to discredit it. According to internal documents released by Elon Musk upon his acquisition of Twitter, the FBI and other intelligence community members essentially directed the platform's censorship operation, in part externally by working with top management, and in part internally by social media companies hiring eye-popping numbers of agency alumni. Journalist Michael Schallenberger reported, based on documents he obtained from Musk, that during all of 2020, the FBI and other law enforcement agencies repeatedly primed Twitter executives to dismiss reports of Hunter Biden's laptop as a Russian hack and leak operation. Feds arranged for top secret security clearances to be granted to Twitter management and even had encrypted messaging networks set up, which they dubbed a virtual war room. To this day, hundreds of people from the intelligence community work at social media companies. Over the last few years, my reporting has been confirmed by virtually every mainstream news outlet, from the Washington Post to the New York Times to Politico, when the stakes were nothing, by the way, 2 years later. No one denies that the laptop is real, that the origin story is exactly what I told you it was in the first place. This elaborate censorship conspiracy wasn't because the information being reported on was false. It was because it was true, and it was a threat to the power centers in this country.
100%. Because if that information had gotten out to millions of Americans, particularly when Joe Biden was running for president, those results could have went a different way. She's 100% right. It wasn't censored because the information was false. It was censored because it was an uncomfortable truth to the powers that be. And this is why we have to continue to push back on the censorship. Whether you like the person or not, you don't have to like what they said. You don't have to agree with what they said. But that doesn't mean they need to be censored for it. This is incredibly dangerous.
What this relationship between the U.S. government officials and American corporations represent is an unprecedented push to undermine the First Amendment, the right to think, write, read, say whatever we want. And how we respond will determine whether we see a free press as inalienable or as optional. Thanks.
Well said. So I definitely loved her speech. We're going to go to the next part here. Just a little bit here from Miss Maya Wiley. I don't know if you all are familiar with her. I'm going to give you a little bit about her background so you understand why she is about to say what she says. She's interesting because the part I'm going to play for you, she starts off this sentence by saying that she agrees with RFK Jr. So you think she's going to say something good in reference to what RFK Jr. said, but she's not. Maya Wiley actually ran for mayor of New York City, along with Andrew Yang and Eric Adams. Maybe you might remember her now. AOC actually endorsed her because Maya Wiley considers herself to be a progressive, so to speak. When I covered that story back then, that was like 2 years ago. It's crazy. It's been 2 years already. When I covered that story back then, one of the things that I alerted people to when I did a little bit of digging is the fact that Maya Wiley was an MSNBC correspondent. And that was not really mentioned when she was running for mayor of New York. So there you go. You had somebody who I felt had a conflict of interest, because if you're working with mainstream media and you're running for mayor, you already have some type of advantage that the other candidates are not going to have. Also, keep that in mind when you hear her talking points on here. She has the narrative that is approved by the State Department. So listen to this.
I want to agree with Mr. Kennedy. I want to agree that it's incredibly important for us to be kind and respectful to one another. It is incredibly important for us to be able to understand our experiences across our differences and to have a platform for those communications. And it is deeply vital that they be based in fact, not fiction. And without regard to the intent or what is in the mind of anyone, which I cannot say, including what is in the mind of any of those who are testifying here today. But what I can say is when you make a statement that suggests that based on race, based on...
I have to pause right there because that's when she gets into the part where she's referring to the statement that he made in reference to the jab, how it affects other races, you know, some races different than others. That's the way I got to say it here on YouTube. Sorry, guys. But notice how she started that off. I have to agree with him. We have to treat each other kind. But then she says fiction. So she's basically telling you again that what RFK Jr. had to say is fiction. The rest of what she kind of has to say is kind of boring. I'm just going to keep it real. But I wanted you to hear that part. And then we're going to get back into this Hunter Biden laptop part here. But yeah, she's a piece of work.
It was relayed to me later that somebody from Twitter, I don't recall who, I'm not sure who, somebody from Twitter essentially asked whether the laptop was real. And one of the FBI folks who was on the call did confirm that, yes, it was, before another participant jumped in and said, no further comment. Proceed to the next slide. So you said he was one example. Do you recall other social media companies? Proceed to the next slide. Ms. Dimlow says, I believe Facebook. We met with Facebook soon thereafter. Can't remember if it was the same day or within a couple of days. And they also asked, and I said, no comment. That was the decision we made in those post-meeting deliberations, which is pretty typical. It was an ongoing investigation, and we don't generally comment on ongoing investigative matters when asked. So, Ms. Morris, to your point, I think this shows one thing for sure. You credited Michael Schellenberger and some of his reporting. One of the things that he asked in one of his Twitter Files stories was whether the Foreign Influence Task Force people, the FBI folks who were interfacing with the social media companies, whether they knew about the Hunter Biden laptop contents that the FBI had since December 2019.
This guy, Mr. Bishop, he looks like the actor that played the dad in the movie Step Brothers. He looks just like him.
So now we know, right? The Foreign Influence Task Force knew it was real. And it wasn't just a few people, it was common knowledge. An analyst on that telephone call before they got their act together admitted that it was real. And then we also know that the social media companies wanted to know if it was real. Of course they did. Because the FBI had been telling them for months to be prepared for a hack and leak operation and also to be prepared for something involving Hunter Biden. Of course they wanted to know. So what do you think about the fact that the FBI, in response to Twitter, told them it was real, then they covered that up or stopped, no further comment, and to Facebook with its billions of users said, no comment, we're not going to tell you.
And remember, Mark Zuckerberg in his interview with Joe Rogan also revealed that too, that the FBI told him to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Yeah, we know that the FBI knew that it was real. They knew it was real since not just December 2019, which is when the subpoena that I published is from, which was in the original story, the thanks for the meeting with your father from Ukraine story. We published the subpoena. And they had already confirmed, though, which we would learn later, they had already confirmed that the laptop was real and the quote, not manipulated in any way, quote, in November of 2019, a month before they actually obtained the laptop to keep.
So why would the FBI, if they knew that it was real and they knew it wasn't manipulated in any way, why would they tell social media platforms to remove that story? Think about that.
Which is when they gave that subpoena to John Paul Mac Isaac, the owner of the Mac store where Hunter Biden forgot the laptop. And I think that's something that gets glazed over in this reporting. I'm so familiar with it, it's nauseating, which is that Jim Baker was the deputy counsel at Twitter. And if that name doesn't sound familiar, I'll remind you all who that is. He's the former deputy counsel of the FBI. Like, are we supposed to all sit here and pretend that he didn't know what that subpoena was when he saw it in the New York Post? I mean, let's not insult our intelligence here and the intelligence of the American people. Obviously, he knew what it was.
Point well taken, Ms. Morris, and my time's expired, but what we have always understood in all likelihood was true, we now have yet one more piece of evidence from the folks at the FBI that they interfered. Comey interfered in 2016. Was it Director Wray himself who interfered in 2020? We still need to know.
Okay. Now, again, regardless of if you are a Republican or a Democrat, etc., that is not what is important right now. What is important is the fact that they did indeed cover up the Hunter Biden laptop story, knowing that it was real. Knowing that it was real. Now we're going to move on to this next piece here.
I thank the gentleman from North Dakota. Wow, the irony and cognitive dissonance from the other side of the aisle, it's deafening. You could cut it with a knife. They are at the same time denying that censorship is occurring, but suggesting that there's more material that needs to be censored. This is a hearing on censorship that began with an effort, with a formal motion from the other side of the aisle to censor Mr. Kennedy. They do not want him to speak. Yet that is the topic of this hearing. They have kept him from speaking. A collusion between the government and private organizations. Mr. Kennedy, in your opening statement, you introduced us to this word malinformation. Can you tell us more about this made-up word, what it means, and some of the things that you've said or tried to say that you've been censored for that's been characterized as malinformation?
Yes, Congressman Massey, and if by your leave, I'd like to just respond very briefly to some of the, what I would call defamations that have been just applied to me by the ranking member. I'm happy to talk to you about my opinions on these issues. What you have stated and tried to associate me with through guilt by association is simply inaccurate. Virtually everything, every statement that you just made about me is inaccurate. I have never advised.
Let me pause there. We're going to go to another part. And sorry, guys, I have to pause at certain parts because of YouTube. He was responding to, did I get to that part? Sorry. Oh, this part. Sorry, guys. This piece right here is really important. You do have to hear what Stacey Plaskett says here because I caught her in something.
Ranking member and one more, and then we'll have to take a break.
Listen to
Thank
this.
you, Mr. Chairman. I know that we talked earlier about a post that Mr. Kennedy had at the beginning of the Biden administration just want the record to reflect that that post has not been taken down. So I'm wondering about the extent of censorship when the post is still there.
What she just said didn't make any sense. So she's basically saying, well, that post that RFK Jr. made, the one about who he thought was more susceptible to, the jab or whatever, or the pandemic or whatever. She's saying that the post is still there. It hasn't been taken down. So I don't see this act of censorship that you guys are talking about in this hearing. She is totally dismissing the fact that Twitter is now owned by Elon Musk. Elon Musk gave them this assignment apparently to do this Twitter file project, right? Correct? So the censorship that was happened under the previous owner of Twitter, which is Jack Dorsey. So what she just said there did not make any sense. For her to make that statement like, I didn't see that post wasn't removed. It's still there. So I don't see this censorship that you're talking about. And it's like, for RFK Jr. sitting there, it's not like he can just step in and push back on her at that moment. He has to wait until he's been called on. He can't talk out of turn. But what she said there did not make any sense. Remember who Stacey Plaskett is, okay? Let's be real here, people. This is the same woman who was taking money from Jeffrey Epstein. I've covered this story multiple times. This is the same woman who didn't want to give the money back after she found out he was convicted, okay? This is the same woman who said she couldn't remember if she had worked for him or not, when come to find out she did work for him. Now, how you forget who you work for? Why is she sitting on a committee about weaponization of the federal government? She's not even a congresswoman. She's a delegate. She represents the Virgin Islands, even though she's from New York. Had to call that out. Sorry.
But more importantly, again, I go back to just the fact that we are creating a platform for this kind of discussion, not about the censorship, not about free speech, but the content of some of that speech that we are amplifying in this room.
And then I'll pause there because she gets into like the jab stuff. I just really don't like this woman. So let me let him finish up here. And there's interruption here.
Me a moment ago with the replacement theory, which is racist.
No, I did not say you.
Time
had the
belongs to the
replacement
gentleman
theory.
from
I said my colleagues.
Time belongs to the gentleman from
I denounce that theory. It is racist, and I have never endorsed it or had any association with it. Our film on a medical, by the
medical
way, Bill Buxton, who is the black CDC official who ultimately exposed the Tuskegee experiment, tried for years and years to appeal to CDC to stop it for 40 years. Finally, he got relief by walking into my uncle's office in the building next door. Teddy held hearings and ended the experiment. I remember that very well. And to say that I created a film that encourages blacks not to get adequate medical care.
Oh, yeah, she did say that. She said basically that he made a film that encouraged black people not to get adequate health care. Let me go on a little bit more because I just want to make sure I skip that. Okay, there we go.
Facebook knew that the disinformation doesn't claim, and what they said, the disinformation doesn't came from this very shady group called the Center for Preventing Digital Hate in England that is funded by dark money that should be looked into. They claim that 65% of the vaccine misinformation on the internet was generated by those 12 people. Facebook itself said that is impossible. That is false information. We know that not to be true. And yet, when the White House asked them to censor this disinformation doesn't, including me, they did it anyway when they knew it to be untrue.
My time has expired. I yield back.
Gentlemen,
and before that, we'll show you the part where she cut across because hold on. I think this is the part where she was cutting.
Medical care is just.
time, do not censor the witness.
I'm not censoring the witness. I'm not censoring the witness. He's still talking.
It's my time and I've given it to the witness. Do not censor him.
I'm not censoring him.
If the views that you and others have applied to me, have attributed to me, if they were actually true, I can see why I shouldn't be able to testify here today. Those are not true. These are defamations and malignancies that are used to censor me, to prevent people from listening to the actual things that I'm saying. And I think, ranking member, that we should have a real conversation rather than an exchange of ad hominem attacks. And answer very quickly to your question, the term malinformation was coined to describe information that Facebook and Twitter and the other social media sites understood was true, but that the White House and other federal agencies wanted censored anyway for political reasons because it challenged official orthodoxies. I'll give you one example.
And we could go ahead and pause there because what I wanted to point out here, notice she was trying to overtalk him, right? Like she was cutting him off. And that was actually Representative Massey who was stepping in saying, let him finish speaking. If you watch the full thing, it's long. But if you watch the full thing, there's a lot of it I can't play on here just because they talk a lot about like the jab and all that kind of stuff. But it's almost 4 hours long. But here you have people at a weaponization of federal government hearing talking about censorship, and they're actively being censored while they're at there having the discussion. They really don't, and I don't agree with RFK Jr. on everything. I've been completely honest with you guys about this. My plan is not to support RFK Jr. But the censorship is ridiculous. Like, it's ridiculous what they are doing. And it's just, and they don't want him. He says, let's sit down and have the conversation. What RFK have to understand is, like, they don't want to have that conversation. They don't want to have it. They want the established narrative that they had to spread throughout the U.S., actually internationally as well. They want that narrative to be the spoken narrative. Any alternative to that, they're going to smear you. They're going to say it's misinformation. They're going to say you're working with Russia. James Carville is out there again saying that Jill Stein works for Russia and all this stuff. Like, it's just, all these people are just ops. A lot of these people are just, like, they're supposed to be our representatives. They're supposed to represent us. They don't represent me. I don't think that way. I don't feel that way. Like, who are these people? They're basically just bought and paid for. They get those positions. They get really comfortable. They get used to the perks. And they realize they want to keep that seat. And they realize to keep that seat, they have to keep their mouth shut and go with the State Department talking points. Otherwise, they'll be sitting right in this spot. You see where Dennis Kucinich is right behind RFK? They'll be sitting right in this spot right here where Dennis Kucinich is sitting. They'll be in that seat instead of in the seat they're in right now. And that's why they got rid of Dennis Kucinich. They got him out of Congress because he wanted to push back. And since he kept, winning, they had to redraw his district to get him out of there. That's what they'll do to you. That's how corrupt. This is no fair system. This is no democracy. So it was very like embarrassing, like listening to that earlier today. Like, I was just cringing because a part of me was just like, I can't believe they're actually trying to censor people at a censorship hearing. It's just, the Twitter files have gone a long way. And there is a poll, and I hope you took that poll question. Eric, let me know when you have the poll ready and we can put it up. But there was a poll I did want you to respond to. After that hearing, based on what you saw, do you believe that there will be any change in reference to censorship? Now that you've seen those clips, if you haven't taken that poll, go ahead and take that poll. All right, and Eric has it up. So here we go. After the congressional hearing, do you believe we'll see improvements with censorship? 7% of you said yes, 79% said no, and 14% of you said you are not sure. 756 votes. And it looks like some people are voting now. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, I'm glad this is being brought to light. I'm happy of the Twitter files because I do feel like we probably would have never known about this had it not been for Matt Taibbi and journalists like Michael Schellenberger who reported this information. We'd still be in the dark. Have a surprise story coming up. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and hit that like button. That helps me with the algo. Thank you. I'm going to go to the comments first, and I have another story we're going to get into. Thank you for the super chat. None of your business. Kamala was perfect for Vice. She was a black Biden. Thank you, Roger. Also, F Bernie too for giving the Democrats my number. There you go. Joanne says the goal is to take everything away from us, and they are succeeding. Martha says, by the way, love you, Sabby. Oh, thank you. Love you too. Thank you, Lorez. Sab, you're right. The U.S. Constitution is a negative rights bill. The government can't do X to us and must be redone into a positive rights bill, like the government must give us health care. Exactly. Exactly. They must give us something. And thank you for the super chat, Martha. Thank you, Sabby, for all you do. I was so angry when I got the text asking me to sign a petition to remove RFK from the ballot. Let me see if I got this text, because you're the second person that said this, because Roger said it too. Let me see. Okay, I don't have a text. I don't have one yet. They may have sent me an email. I don't want to go in that inbox. But anyway, thanks, Bernie, for giving away my info. I saw you were live and basically covering this. Thank you so much, Martha. We're going to go into our next story here, which is a surprise story. Oh, dear. So Kyle Kulinski decided to cover Dr. West's conversation with Sean Hannity. It was really interesting. Some of the things that he says I agree with. Some of the things I very much disagree with. We're not going to go through the whole video, but there are a couple points that I do want to point out that I think needs to be said, and I think you need to hear it from someone who's a Black host. So let's go ahead and get into this discussion, because it's really interesting to me how people who are not a minority try to speak for minorities. So we're going to get into this.
Cornel West is running for president of the United States. Of course, now he's running with the Green Party. He's going to have to get through their primary first, but nonetheless, he will, likely get through it and then be on the ballot in the general election. Well, he went on Sean Hannity's show, and this is an interesting exchange that you're about to see here. He kind of triggers Hannity with a certain criticism of Trump, or more specifically, Trump's dad. Watch this.
And if Democrats really want to combat racism, sexism, well, they may want to start from within. After all, it was the Democratic Party that founded the KKK.
We have a bunch of professional right-wing commentators who rely on their audience not knowing what a political realignment is. It's astonishing. They play hide the ball with a basic political concept that perfectly explains why that was the case. There were racist Southern Democrats. They were called Dixiecrats. And then, where do they end up going, Sean? What are their voting habits like today and for the past, 4 or 5 decades? Oh, that's right. They're now Republicans. But he just does it's amazing. It's so dishonest, because he knows this. He knows what a political realignment is. He knows that's a ridiculous talking point. Jesus.
So yes, a political realignment did happen, but I think it's important that Kyle Kulinski needs to acknowledge that there are still racist Democrats. I think this talking point, and I've heard it for a long time, not just in mainstream liberal media, but also in left independent media, this idea that it's the Republicans who are the ones that are racist. First of all, everyone that's a Republican is not racist. And somehow this idea that people who are Democrats, there's no way they can possibly be racist. But there are racist Democrats. In fact, there are racist Democrats that live in the district that he grew up in the county that he grew up in Westchester County in New York. So I lived in New York. There are a lot of racist people in New York, in the city too, by the way, and in Westchester County. And they're Democrats. Kyle Kulinski leaves out the covert racism. He leaves out the people, and we've talked about this before on the show. He leaves out the people who say they support Black Lives Matter, and they may even have the sign in the window of their apartment or their home or their yard, but they don't want Black people moving into their neighborhood. If you look at a city like New Rochelle, for example, very diverse, very diverse, right? But talk to Black people who grew up in New Rochelle, and they'll tell you just how racist New Rochelle can be. You see what I'm saying? This idea that, oh, yes, there were these Southern Democrats, and yes, and they moved over to the Republic. They became the Republican Party. And yeah, so the racists are in the Republican Party. No, there's still racists in the Democratic Party, too. And this is something that people like Kyle Kulinski don't want to point out, because then you have to admit that the Democratic Party is a little racist towards people, too. The covert racism, and some of it's just blatant racism. Okay? Just because you have a D next to your name doesn't mean you cool with everybody in all colors and all shades. Just because you have a D next to your name doesn't mean that you also don't call Black people the N-word too when they not around in your face. These are the kind of things that I've seen. And you typically see it. He's talking about the Southern, da-da-da. There's a lot of racism right here in the North too, okay? There's racism here in Massachusetts. There's racism in New York. There's racism in Connecticut, all New England, all of this jazz. There's a lot of racist people here too. Let's stop pretending like the racists are just these Republicans that live in the South or live in the sticks in the Midwest somewhere, or just out there in the middle of nowhere. The whole damn country, for the most part, every state has racism. No state is immune to it. And no political party, this two-party system, these Democrats and these Republicans, they're not immune to racism either. Just because you have a D next to your name doesn't mean that you're not racist. But see, Kyle Kulinski, he don't want to say that, though. He don't want to get into that. He don't really understand that experience because he's white. Let's just keep it real. He might have been around some of those white Democrats in Westchester County that made some of them racist remarks, and he might have just shrugged it off. But see, they won't tell you that. Let's go on.
Christ. They're the ones that fought against school integration and are now fighting against school choice.
To be fair, it's true that Joe Biden, it says on screen, Joe Biden didn't compromise with segregationists. He fought for their cause in schools, experts say. That's actually true. That's actually true. Now, a lot of Republicans also agreed with Joe Biden on that. They agreed with him doing the crime bill. A lot of them voted for it. But that part is accurate.
Biden himself.
But Biden co-wrote the crime bill. You see what I'm saying? And these are the kind of things I started to notice along the way. You know, Kyle used to be heavily critical against Joe Biden, especially when he was running in 2020 and Bernie was in the race. He was very critical of Joe Biden and his history. Very critical of that. Everything changed after Joe Biden won. All of a sudden, it was Joe Biden is Dark Brandon. He's very progressive. He's doing all these things and da-da-da. Why the change? Why the change? When I tell you that Joe Biden is a segregationist, it's based on things that he's passed legislatively. It's based on legislation that he co-wrote. It's based on policies that he's passed. When I tell you that Joe Biden wasn't nice to women either, and this is another thing they want to just say is part of the right. All you got to do is go back and look at the testimony of Anita Hill and listen to the way that Joe Biden spoke to her. Listen to how Joe Biden said that her witnesses could not testify. Let's stop pretending like that was 50 years ago. That wasn't that long ago. So let's stop pretending here that Joe Biden, because he's a Democrat, that he's actually for the women and for Black people and all that kind of jazz. He showed you exactly who he was his entire political career. And the only reason that Barack Obama chose him for vice president was to win over white moderates. Let's keep it real. Let's go on.
Work with segregationists, including his mentor, the former Klansman.
It's true. He did it on busing. That is true, but it's just very rich coming from Sean Hannity because he's actually even worse on all these issues.
He didn't want his kids to grow up in a, quote, racial jungle. And in 1993, it was Biden that co-sponsored the crime bill that resulted.
Sean Hannity supports the crime bill. He's not telling you that. Joe Biden did this terrible thing that I totally agree with. Dude, you consider yourself tough on crime. You love something like the crime bill. What are you doing?
But we already know that. We know that because of the party that he's in. We know typically the Republican Party backs the police. They're tough on crime. Typically, not all of them, but typically, we already know that. Why are you telling people something that's already obvious to the majority of your audience, which are mainly liberals and progressives anyway? This is the part that is really weird to me. How many people in the audience know the shit that Joe Biden did? And I'm talking about some of the things that have not been said. Let's talk about it. Has Tara Reid been on this show? She's been on my show multiple times. Let's go on.
But when it's to attack, see, this is the whole point, man. No principles. When it's to attack Biden, it's like he'll just bury the fact that he supports that same legislation. It's just dishonest. This is what he does. This is what he does.
He can bury it because people already know. What do you mean? There's nothing to bury. He's very vocal about what he believes and what he stands for. The audience already knows that.
Mass incarceration of African Americans who Biden referred to as predators on our streets. Left-wing scholar Dr. Cornel West is now openly accusing Biden of committing crimes against humanity against African Americans. Dr. West is seeking the Green Party's nomination for president in 2024.
Now, let me just explain to you real quick what's going on here. This is Fox News is clever. They're very clever with how they approach politics. The goal for them is 24/7 beat up on Democrats. And so they will even bring somebody on who is to the left of the Democrats to attack the Democrats from a left-wing perspective, because they don't care how you're attacking the Democrats as long as you're attacking the Democrats.
But you'll never see Kyle talk to those types of people. Now, he's talked to Dr. West, like, especially during the Bernie days and stuff like that. He probably will talk to Dr. West again because they do have that type of relationship. But you don't see Kyle talk to those people to the left of the Democratic Party. When do you see Kyle will go talk to Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, all these right-wing hosts? He'll go talk to them. But when do you see Kyle talk to someone to the left of him? Do you see Kyle talk to people like Aaron Mate? And I mean, strictly just on foreign policy. You ain't even got to get into all the domestic, just strictly someone to the left of you on foreign policy. Do you see those people come on secular talk? Do you see Aaron Mate on there? Do you see Max Blumenthal on there? Margaret Kimberly? Danny Haiphong? How come you don't bring those people on to have these conversations? Why is it that you're willing? This is the part that cracks me up. You complain about the channels that focus on criticizing the Democratic Party and not really focusing on criticizing the Republican Party, but you in turn will go have conversations with those same conservatives that you smear, but you won't have those conversations with people to the left of you. What's that really about? These are the things I want people to start paying attention to. Now, to the point of Fox News, yeah, they'll bring people on to crash and like smash the Democratic Party. But even when people do come on there and they're asked about the Democratic Party and they're smart about it and they trash both parties, I've seen Jimmy Dore trash both parties and say they're both corporate and corrupt. Even when that happens, people like Kyle Kulinski in that side of the internet will smear those people anyway. They'll purposely cut out that part of the interview so that people don't see it on their screen and make it seem like that person just went on there to kiss up to Tucker Carlson when Tucker was hosted on Fox. They'll cut that part out. You guys know exactly who I'm talking about. Oh, I've seen all this stuff. They'll just show to make it seem like that person is now right wing, and they'll totally omit the part when the person says both parties are corrupt. Let's go on.
The substance doesn't matter to them. What matters first and foremost is just attack Democrats. So it's a trick, it's a strategy, and honestly, it works pretty well. Now, they try to do the same thing with Marianne. You know, they invite on Marianne, and they're like, why don't you go ahead and tell us how Biden's brain is not functional? And so this way they can go, see, even the left agrees his brain isn't functional. So it's all a strategy. It's all a trick. It's a very effective trick. But what Marianne did is Marianne to be like, look, I'm not playing your game. I'm not doing personal attacks. I'll talk about where I disagree with Biden on policy. I'm not going to get personal. But more importantly, for all my disagreements with Biden, I have way more disagreements with you, Sean Hannity. And
that's actually not what Marianne said. I covered that interview when Marianne went on Sean Hannity. Yeah, she said she wasn't going to make personal attacks, but she did not say I have more disagreements with you, Sean Hannity. She did not say that. So why is he trying to make it seem like she was more amplified than she was?
Fox News and Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, as bad as Biden is, you guys are significantly worse, and it's not even close. Not even close. So Cornel West goes on, and to his credit, he does the same thing as Marianne. He's like, yeah, okay, y'all go after Biden a little bit, but let's not forget, you guys are just as bad, if not worse. All right, let's watch.
Always good.
But the question that I think Kyle should be asking is, why isn't liberal media inviting these voices on? Think about that. Now, Cornel West is in that lucky spot where he's very well known, so CNN cannot ignore like Cornel West. Plus, they do consider him to be a big threat. They can't ignore him. They just can't. So they've had him on. But I'm talking about some of the other voices. You know, why did they ignore people like Jill Stein? Why do they ignore people like Glenn Greenwald? For the people who say Glenn Greenwald's right wing because he only goes on Fox News. He's not invited on those other networks. I've interviewed Glenn Greenwald and I asked him that question. So it's just, this is a big part of the problem. Here's the thing, Kyle knows that because Kyle also is not invited on those networks. Think about that. Think about it. I think he was on one time. I remember one time, I can't remember, it was CNN or Fox. I think it was Fox that he was invited on to. But Kyle also isn't invited onto those networks. So he knows that.
Good to have you back. How are you, my friend?
Oh, indeed. I appreciate you having me back and hope you and your family are doing all right. It's been a while, my brother.
I love when you call me Brother Sean. You're always welcome to do so. You are saying that Biden committed crimes against humanity against black Americans, and you said his record on race issues, and you called out the Democratic Party's history. Let me ask you this. Why overwhelmingly do minorities and African Americans, Hispanic Americans, why are they still continuing to vote in large numbers in the Democratic Party?
Because they're a trillion times better than Republicans, and we have a two-party system. We don't have rank.
Wrong. So here is the white guy trying to speak for minorities. Let's let him finish because I have a lot to say here. Boy, I tell you.
Party's history. Let me ask you this. Why overwhelmingly do minorities and African Americans, Hispanic Americans, why are they still continuing to vote in large numbers in the Democratic Party?
Because they're a trillion times better than Republicans, and we have a two-party system. We don't have ranked choice voting. We still have first past the post voting. So either the Republican or the Democrat is going to win, and minority communities have accurately come to the conclusion, oh, the Democrats are just way better.
What do you know about minority communities? What minority community have you lived in? What do you know about? No, that's actually not how it works. And hey, I've been on both sides. So let me tell you why this happens. Number one, first and foremost, the majority of Black Americans don't vote. Surprise! The majority do not. Two, the ones that do, it's typically older Black people. People 60 and up, 55, 60 and up. Typically older Black people that progressively go out and vote. Now, why do they tend to always vote for the Democratic Party? One reason is because of fear. There's a lot of fear base that comes into the Black community, and it's done via the church, the Black church. That's the big one. This is why people like Jim Clyburn is able to still continue to win, because he has that hold and that power in the Black church. So if you have that hold and that respect with the Black church, oh yeah, you can win. So who is more likely to go to church? Older Black voters, not younger Black voters. So if older black voters going to church every Sunday, and then sometimes you got Bible study, maybe on Wednesday. I know I grew up in the church. And the pastor is in bed with the politician, the Democrats who are running. Then the pastor let the Democrat candidates come to the church on Sunday during the sermon, tell you how you should vote for them, how they're going to help the community. And the majority of the black Democrats that are elected don't do anything for the black community. But people continue to vote for the Democratic Party because of, one, fear that if you don't vote for them, the Republican Party is going to take everything away from you, even though behind your back, the Democrats still taking things away from you too. We'll get into that in just a second. And two, you have to look at who is actually voting in the black community. So you have a lot of people, Democrat candidates, they come into the black church and they get the church behind them, and that's how they get a lot of their support. Kyle doesn't know that. I don't know why he's trying to speak for with the minority stuff. Not lived in no minority community. He is not a minority. But it just kills me. For the longest time, this has been the narrative. For the longest time in left independent media, it's mainly just been people listening to white guys like Kyle try to speak for everybody, even communities he knows nothing about. And people believe it. Let's go on.
They're just way better. Like 98% of the Republican Party wants to cut Social Security, wants to cut Medicare, wants to cut Medicaid, and the Democrats don't.
Didn't Joe Biden just cut Medicaid? Didn't Joe Biden just cut Medicaid?
Some of them do, but the overwhelming majority of them don't. So maybe that's why. Maybe because they're better on a lot of substantive issues. No, that's not.
The majority of Black Americans. See, this is the thing. When we talk about even things like Medicaid, we talk about things like Medicare. Think about all the Black voters that don't have any type of health care, no type of health insurance. Go into some of these, maybe give Kyle a microphone, get him out of the studio, send him to the hood, and ask him to interview Black people in those communities and ask them what those Democrats have been doing for them. I'll tell you, go to Baltimore. Go to Baltimore, where my parents grew up, in the hood, and ask the people in Baltimore how the Democrats have helped them in their community. They ain't done a damn thing for them. You go back to Baltimore, every time I go back, it still look the same. It still look the same. Buildings that's still torn down, still torn down. Nobody tried to rebuild it. The rubble just sits there. Nothing. No progress, nothing. Some of the neighborhoods have gotten worse. And every time Democrats in power, usually Black Democrats in power, usually the mayor has been a Black Democrat. And who do they help? Not the Black people in those neighborhoods. Those neighborhoods get worse. This is what I'm trying to tell you. But Kyle know everything. He know about minorities.
I'd say they're good. Let's not say they're perfect. They're far from it. But if you do an objective empirical analysis as to whose policies help regular working class people of color more, it's not.
People in the hood, working class regular folk, are not trying to think about no damn empirical analysis. Nobody cares about that shit. When I go back home to visit my relatives, they're just trying to get up and go to work. Get up, go to work, and figure out if they're going to pay the light bill. They ain't got time for no damn empirical analysis. What the fuck is this? You see how clueless they are? So clueless. Let's go back a little bit because we'll finish with this point here.
A lot of substantive issues. Now, that's not to say they're good. That's not to say they're perfect. They're far from it. But if you do an objective empirical analysis as to whose policies help regular working class people of color more, it's not close. It's not close. So that's why, Sean, that's why they do it. Jesus.
So that's why people still poor and struggling and living in the projects, because the Democrat policies have helped them so much. That's why they still stuck at these schools that are underfunded, that are under-resourced. People still struggling to pay bills in those communities. That's why. Because their policies, Democrat policies, have helped them so much. At the end of the day, both of these parties are corporate. Both parties care about money and not people. And Kyle Kulinski knows that. Focusing primarily on Democrat versus Republican, that's easy. Focusing on the class perspective and how both parties screw over the worker, that's the more difficult part. Because see, now you can't tell your audience to come out and vote for the Democrat, which is what they run on. Malcolm X said something about this once. Maybe you should hear it. Listen to this.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race. And what kind of alibi do they come up with? They try and pass the buck to the Dixiecrats. Now, back during the days when you were blind, deaf, and dumb, ignorant, politically immature, naturally you went along with that. But today, as your eyes come open and you develop political maturity, you're able to see and think for yourself. And you can see that a Dixiecrat is nothing but a Democrat in disguise.
One more time, the first part.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Well, but Kyle won't play nothing like that. He don't want to play that. That's a little too spicy for his audience. Anytime you still going around supporting this party and they ain't done nothing for you, you're a traitor. That was Malcolm X. You're a traitor to your own damn people. They don't play stuff like that, though. The Kyle side of the internet, they're not going to play these speeches from Malcolm X or Martin Luther King when they told you that the liberal was a problem, when they told you to beware of the white moderate. They don't play those things. Wouldn't go too well with their audience who still believes you can reform the Democratic Party. Let's keep it real. I'm going to go to some of the comments and then we'll go into Tennessee. Shout out to Christina for becoming a Sabby member. Whoop, 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 whoop. Thank you, Janice. Does he have the thin blue line flag behind him? I don't think so. No. Oh, you might have been talking about something else. Thank you, Victor. Kyle's gone full blue MAGA. Yeah, man. I can't believe I used to listen to some of these people. Thank you, Goba44. Be nice. Marianne gave Kyle a nice wedding gift. Thank you, Sir Bikes a lot, for the super chat. Sir Bikes a lot is cute. Thank you for this as well. Kyle Kulinski is the new Rush Limbaugh for Dems. Yeah, man. I'm going to tell you, if you out here like simping for the Democratic Party, oh, your channel will grow like that. Trust, boo. They like it. Let me go ahead and get the comment from Roger Meadows. All right. Thank you, Roger. The government is supposed to regulate the powerful to keep them from harming us. We, the people, are supposed to regulate the government to force them to serve us. Who better to serve us than us? Who better to govern us than us? Start and push ballot initiatives and become citizen lawmakers and constitutional amenders. Let's get to 40 states that allow us to place our own amendments on the ballot via CBI. And thank you for this as well. Once done, we have voters of 38 states ratify a state amendment, mandating state lawmakers call for a convening of the states to go around Congress to introduce an amendment to the Constitution, that allows for a national ballot initiative amendment that allow for voters across the country to place their own initiative on a national ballot to pass federal law by 50% plus and 66% to ratify our amendments. I thought that sentence was going to end another way when I heard you say the pastor is in bed with. But anyway, Hannity and I don't care what party they are. They're still white, Sean. Stop hiding behind partisan language to obfuscate acknowledging your own racial bias. This is why we have to abolish all political parties. They're getting in the way of having us having an honest talk. Whites from both parties are like, no, they are the racists. No, they are the racists. Sean, after all the racist comments you said about Obama, swore to God he was guys till they went after Trump. When Sean interviewed Roger Stone, he was astonished. It was all good when they went after Black liberation groups in the 60s, though. These are really good points, Roger. Also, yo, Sam, Kyle, Emma, y'all from New York, you say you want Medicare for all, but when have you helped to give light to our fight to when we were protesting to get New York Healthcare Act passed? Also, Sab, it is mostly the elder women from our community. Yeah, it's usually older. I'm telling you, man. All right. Thank you for the super chat. Buds, not bombs. Great show. Thanks, Sabby. Thank you. And thank you, Dwayne. The same FBI now censoring Democratic Party opponents killed MLK and X. Thank you so much for that. I think I got time to start Tennessee, and then I'll have to finish it when I get back. We'll start Tennessee ballot initiative. If you guys want to do call in tonight, let me know. I won't be able to do a long one because I am leaving. I'm heading out tomorrow. I got to travel. But we'll go ahead and start with Tennessee.
Immature, naturally you went along.
Sorry. Tennessee ballot measures 2022. Tennessee does not allow its voters to place initiatives or referendums on the ballot, be they to pass their own laws, repeal laws, or ratify their own amendments to the Tennessee Constitution. Only the legislator can pass laws independent of voter involvement and place initiatives on the ballot using a legislative referred constitutional amendment for voters to ratify amendments into the Tennessee Constitution. So we'll go over the first one, and then I think we'll just dive right into call-in, actually. So Amendment 1, the Right to Work Amendment. This one is an important one. A yes vote supported amending the state constitution to add a new section to make it illegal for workplaces to require mandatory labor union membership for employees as a condition for employment. This actually was ratified by 69.79%. Did other states vote on right to work laws? At the time of the election, Ballotpedia had tracked 28 right to work ballot measures appearing on statewide ballots between 1944 and 2018. Of the 28 measures, 18 were constitutional amendments, 7 were statutes, and 3 were referendums on statutes passed by legislature. Out of the 18 constitutional amendments, 8 were approved and 10 were defeated. 2 statutes were approved and 5 were defeated. 2 of the referendums were approved upholding the right to work law, and 1 was defeated repealing the law. At the time of the election, the last vote on a right to work law was in 2018 in Missouri. Voters defeated Proposition A, which repealed a right to work law passed by the state legislature. The law was repealed with 67.47% of voters rejecting the law and 32.53% of voters deciding to uphold the law. That is interesting. Who supported this? Mainly Republican representatives and senators and organizations, Americans for Tax Reform, to name one of the few. And one of the arguments was the Tennessee right to work law states that workers cannot be fired or hired or in any way discriminated against based on whether or not they are a member of a union. I think that this is an important enough civil right that it belongs in our state constitution. That's interesting. Democrats opposed it, as you can imagine. Unions, Tennessee AFL-CIO. And I wanted to see the campaign. The amount of money spent to support it was over $243,000, and the amount to oppose was over $43,000. So that's interesting. We'll pick up the rest of Tennessee when I return Tuesday night, because I'm off tomorrow and I'm also off on Sunday. I'm going to be traveling, so I won't be here. I won't be live this weekend. But you'll have plenty of clips to keep you busy and hold you over. Eric, I think I'm going to take like a really quick break, and then I'll create the call-in link, and then I'll be back. So yeah, whenever you're ready, I'll take a quick break and then we'll do call-in.
All right. Let's see, is this thing working? I think I'm good. I can check my, oh yeah, we got good levels here. All right. This is the part of the show where I jump in. We give our Sabrina a little break before we jump into call-in. So we'll be posting a link. I don't think the link's ready yet. Let me resize this. You can do call-in by hitting the link on your browser, or you can install the call-in app on your smartphone. And if you search up Sabby Sabs, it'll come right up. But yeah, she made the late decision, because yeah, I was starring these ones in the chat. Let's see, Roger want to call in. Where says do a short call in, only 3 hours. We'll see if she can manage to do a short one. That'll be a new one. Gamer says, yeah, do a short call in. Gamer's always there for it. And Big T503 said, yes, do a call in. I have something I'd like to discuss. All right. Well, we'll be happy to hear from you. Yeah, that's kind of what we do in call in is that's where we want to hear from you. And in your opinion, you can talk about any of the stories from tonight, or really talk about anything you want. You can talk about Kyle Kalinski's hair if you want, anything you want. And Corey and I, excuse me, Corey and I were laughing. We were during the show, like at Kyle, at how he's how he's doing this cool kind of streamer thing, and he's vaping, and he's got the Twitch look, and it's like that seems to be like his new lane here. He's certainly not much of a leftist anymore. I'd put it that way. Yeah, Java the Cat says, I love listening to Colin, and Colin sounds like a great idea. So we definitely had some support for Colin. I know a few of you also said, well, you don't have to do Colin, give Sabby a break. And I'm sure she appreciates that as well. But she also likes hearing from you. That's one of the things that I remember when we first started doing the Colin, that I was kind of, I wasn't sure like if it was really worth doing or what it would be like. But but it is, people got interesting stuff to say. So I'm glad we're doing it, and we'll see if it the future of Colin seems a little bit in doubt with it being sold, and it seems to be kind of flailing right now. So we'll see what happens with it. Hopefully they'll maybe fold it into maybe locals, or have some kind of thing where they still have this ability, because it does make it so you can have this kind of Colin show, and Sabby's going to be back shortly, and then we'll jump into Colin. And yeah, Gamer says no Sabby tomorrow. Yep, she's getting a little break, but she gave you extra shows this week. Yeah, so like Colin, we want to hear from you, and sometimes I'm on there, I'll have some things to say. I get a chance here to say some things too, and I always like to bring it back to the money, So when Kyle's talking about, oh, this or that, the Republicans are worse than the Democrats. It's like it's all a show, it's all theater, and what they both have in common, what they're both doing, is they're both working for the billionaires and the mega corporations, the tools of the billionaires. It's all about that top 0.1% versus the rest of us. And so any analysis, or what did he say, like an objective analysis that like doesn't take that into consideration, is just missing the point. And I don't think it's that he's dumb. I think it's more like being, paid to not see that on purpose. Because if he's not talking about class issues, if he's not talking about that stark reality that both these parties are corrupt corporate warmongers, then that sweet gig he's got going, the grift, is going to peter out. It doesn't pay as well. And so that's, to me, is really the thing to always focus on, is that it's all about the money. Why are both parties corrupt? Because they both serve the same donor owners. Why is there censorship? There's censorship because it's in the interest of that billionaire class to, speaking of censorship, I mean, I even have to be careful here about what I say about, when it comes to why the big recent round of censorship happened. But it's all about money, or it's all about funneling that money to, the huge corporate interests. And so, yeah, I think we'll be starting our call-in shortly. I think I saw Sabby put a link in here. Let me see if I can find that. And there it is. Yeah, so if you'll see that in the chat, you can click on it. She's back. All right, you get bonus Sabby. You thought she might have been gone already, but
all right, guys. Yeah, so we are going to do call in. That link is pinned to the top of the chat.
Thank you
for the super chat, Roger. Eric loving the Wolfman Jack look. Oh, you do look like Wolfman Jack.
People don't even know who Wolfman Jack is anymore. But yeah, he had a song back in the day too.
Eric says he remembers. Or sorry, Roger says he remembers. Yeah, so we'll head on over there, guys. The link is pinned to the top of the chat, so I'll see you all on call in. And other than that, let me go ahead and get that up, actually. Okay, there we go. Other than that, have a good night.
See you around.
Keep up the fight.